Today's session is as you can see, it's a webinar on effective strategies for influence or to influence without authority. The session will be recorded, and I'd love to have participation with everybody. You know, it'll be an interactive session, so feel free whenever you're ready and comfortable to turn on your camera if you're comfortable with that. And I'd like to ask everybody to keep their mics on mute until there's sort of questions or whatever else. You can, I believe you can put your hand up, or you can maybe send a chat message, and I'll read my messages on this side of the screen. I've got two screens happening. Okay, let's just see. Okay, you got Ziad. Okay, excellent. All right. So welcome everyone. Some housekeeping, as I mentioned, keep your mic muted. If you can keep your video on, that's great. Let's make it interactive and participate via chat. We'll pause for questions, and there are a couple of quizzes, and yeah, we'll take it from there. I'll do my best to finish before 7:30 if we can. For everyone who's just joined us, the session is recorded, so I can share that with yourselves and others later on. All right, so for those who don't know me, I'm going to introduce myself quickly. So my name is Abdel Fattah. About 25 years ago, I finished uni, I got a degree in information systems, which basically is IT. And I spent about 10 years in software development, and the last 15 years in different management roles, project management, change management, etc. I'm currently the head of projects at a leading pharmaceutical retail company, and I'm the founder of Leaders Academy, which is it's what I'm doing on the side. It's not my full-time gig. My full-time role is head of projects, and which basically is a lot of project management and change management in the pharmaceutical industry. I'm also a trainer and a coach, a leadership coach. I've been doing that for the last 10 years. Okay, I want to know a little bit about you. So let's spend maybe just 2 minutes. If you can put in the chat, introduce yourself, what you do, which city you're from. I think most people are from Sydney, but if you're from outside of Sydney, let me know. And why are you here? What are you looking to get out of this session? Who's going to start us off? Let's see. Okay, we're waiting. Joe, why don't you kick off?
I'm trying to open my camera.
That's okay. Just feel comfortable.
Start my video. Yes. Okay, good. So Joe Sulaiman. Abdul, it's a similar profile like yours, software engineer for 10 years, and then I moved to management. I climbed my ladder from IT project manager to the PMO and project program delivery. Been doing it for now almost 13 years. Had a couple of breaks in between, not like you straight away. But it has been an interesting journey. I'm in Sydney, and I've been in Sydney on and off from 15 years back. I've been traveled inside and internationally 2 times,
Nice.
but the last travel was 5.5 years now.
Nice.
Straight in Sydney. Why I'm here? I wrote a paper on leadership with no authority somewhere 2008 or 9.
Nice.
And then I said, well, influencing with no authority, it's something caught my attention. So maybe it's a refresher for me, and maybe I'm happy to see what's out there recently.
Okay.
Researched, it's been a while, so it's good to catch up with what's going on.
Excellent. Maybe next session we'll run it together.
Why not?
You should be running this session. But thank you.
When you have time for me, we can talk.
Nice.
All right, thanks. Let's give the opportunity to other people.
Thank you, Joe. So Khan is introducing himself via chat. So Khan, based in Melbourne, and Khan is actually a financial advisor, and he's keen to get some gems from this session. Anybody else who wants to introduce themselves via video or chat, feel free to. There we go, Dr. Rawa. Alaikum salam. How are you going?
How are you?
It's very well. Glad that you made it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. So my name is Rawa Ayubi, and so my background is management administration, and then I did masters in arts and major Islamic studies, and then I did a PhD in Islamic study. I'm doing currently doctorate in business leadership.
Yeah.
And I'm running my own academy as well of Aspire Leadership Network. And I'm just, doing my thesis now, writing my thesis about strategic foresight for management and leadership consultant. And
Nice.
I'm very happy to be here with you, Brother Abdul Fattah and Sir Asma,
Thank you.
and all
Thank
the attendees. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you making the time. I've got Khadija on the chat, who's from Sydney, and a Kindy manager. She's a pre-Kindy center manager, here to brush up, I think, his skills in management and in personal life. Great, thank you. And Haj Mustafa Abu Bilal, you're on mute. It's getting pretty warm here. I'm not
Assalamu
sure.
alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam, rahmatullah. I'm
How are
glad that you
you,
made it.
brother?
I'm very well, very well. Long time no see.
Yeah, yeah. Welcome to all also the participants, and I'm also interested to attend courses which is to do with strategies or planning that is directly linked to leadership and how to influence people. I have a master in teaching and master in translation and interpreting. So this will further encourage me or enhance my skills and abilities and how to deal with students.
Nice. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much for making the time. And Haj Abu Bilal, Mustafa Al-Ayubi is actually a mentor of mine. Since I was a teenager, I've always looked up to him and always learned from him. So I really appreciate you making the time. And you're based in Canberra, I believe?
Yes,
at the moment?
yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, great. Thank you. Anybody else? Maybe we'll have one more introduction.
Salam Abdul Fattah.
Salam.
It's Islam Al-Kahki here.
Salam, how are you going?
Alhamdulillah.
Very good to have you. Excellent.
So my name is Islam Al-Kahki. I'm from Sydney. My background in finance. Currently, I'm doing my master's degrees in financial technologies in University of New South Wales. And I'm working as a chief operating officer in Tender Loving Care. It's disability services provider based in Bankstown.
Yes, and what are you looking to get from this session?
I'm looking at different ways to be able to influence and manage my team without using my title as a chief operating officer, because I believe titles is just titles. Titles shouldn't be giving us power to manage our team. It should be the other way around. And I'm looking for different strategies and how can I do that?
All right, great. Thank you very much, Islam. Okay, so we've got a lot of people on. Let me just double check. We've got about 16 people on the call. A lot of good friends, all the new friends. A lot of people who are experts in their field. So I really appreciate everyone's time. I'm going to get straight to the point. We are here talking about influence. We're going to compare that to influence with authority or without authority. I can see that May has just joined. Is that May Abu Mahmoud? Good to see you, May. Okay, so we're here to talk about influence with and without authority, and we're going to focus on primarily influence without authority. Now, as I mentioned, my background is not academic. I'm a practitioner. I primarily went up the ladder, in the corporate ladder, through the technology and digital transformation space. So I am a practitioner. We have people who are academic who can probably give us a lot more research, a lot more findings, and the latest research. I'm here to share some research with you. I'm sharing a few models. But I'd like it to be an interactive. I want us to learn from each other. I'm not here to teach. I'm here to share with you some information. I'm going to share some practical tips and stories with you, but I'd love to open the floor to, anyone who wants to share any practical examples and, maybe take like 30 seconds to share a story or whatever else. We'll start off with some definitions. So influence, the Oxford Dictionary defines influence as the capacity to have an effect on the character and development or behavior of someone or something, which basically means the way we communicate with them, I can change their thinking, change their mind, change the way they feel to get them to do something. Okay, that's effectively what it says. Compared to authority, authority is the power or right to give orders, make decisions, and enforce obedience. Okay, so it uses, titles and what have you. Now, I want to share with you some obvious things. I will start with the basics, right? So spheres of influence. So where we are at the moment, if you're looking at a typical hierarchy, we've got our superiors, my boss, my CEO, I've got my parents, my community leaders. Maybe superiors is not the best term for it, but let's just call it superiors. And then subordinates, people who report to me, maybe my kids. Sometimes feels like they don't report to me. It feels like they're running the show. But my kids, my team who report to me, or my direct reports at work. Let's say some of the youth I work with, who I mentor and I coach. Then we have friends, colleagues, peers. So people like my wife. It feels sometimes like she's the boss, but that's where she is. But peers. My siblings, my colleagues at work, etc. Traditionally, when we talk about authority, it is a hierarchical. So it's the boss give. This is the old way of working, the old management and leadership management structure. The boss gives the orders, and that flows down, and it's usually by title, by information, etc. And that goes down the hierarchy. But what we're talking about is not only across to your peers and friends where you can influence without authority. I actually challenge that conventional thought. And I also think you can also work with people who are maybe further up, you might call as superiors or subordinates, indirectly you can influence them without necessarily having the right authority. This training is primarily focused on thinking models, psychology, human behavior, and things like that. I know May is a psychologist, so she knows infinitely more than I do, obviously. But this is based on my studies and real life scenarios. So I'm going to share with you a nice quote here. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. This is so prevalent that we see this almost every day. We have a conversation. I think that my message already come across, but sometimes I've missed the point. I just want to check in. Can someone just message in the chat, say, yeah, you can hear me? Can you hear me okay? You're feeling all right? Maybe a thumbs up or a yes in the chat. Okay, excellent. All good. Perfect. I've got a question for everyone. You can use the chat if you like. Is influence a skill that is learned, or it's a natural ability? Again, let me know in the chat. Learned or natural? Just like you can put learned, or you can put natural, or L or N. Up to you. Some people are saying both. Learned. Okay, good. L. Mostly learned. Okay, great. So here's what's interesting. There are people who are obviously born with skills. They're more inclined to be influential, and it could be just embedded, in their psychology, in their childhood, because their parents are very influential and they've just picked up the skills. They're more inclined to be great orators or communicators. It just runs in their genes. Most of the time, it can be learned. So if you are a great communicator, if you are a good influencer, you can develop it further by obviously practice. If you're not, you can definitely learn it. I'm going to share with you the 70-20-10 model, which says basically that most of the things that we, or 10% of the things that we learn are based on readings, seminars, one-way trainings, etc. 20% is based on collaboration, group work, interactive discussions, and 70% is actually on the job where we're getting feedback. And you'll notice the arrow. You'll notice the arrow that the more interactive the learning process or experience, the more you learn. And that is because when I interact at work, let's say, for example, at work, right? I'm having a conversation at work. My boss pulls me aside and says, "Look, Abdul, you've had a conversation with your peers. There were certain things that you're trying to influence. I don't think that landed very well. Why did that not land very well?" Well, okay, person A, let's say Adam, is more of a visual learner. He wants to see images. He wants to, and you put a presentation full of text, for example, while Anna is more of a people person, but you just focus on the numbers, etc. So you miss the point. That type of feedback is very important. Unfortunately, when it comes to technical skills, we're getting that feedback. As a programmer, I can get instant feedback. If my code didn't run, it tells me it didn't run. But interpersonal skills usually tend to plateau in life, early in life. Why? Because political correctness, I don't want to make mistakes at work. Usually we don't get that feedback, etc. So that's what usually happens. It's important to attend, obviously, training like this, and to do further training to ensure that we are always honing in on those skills. Okay, so we'll look at barriers of influence first. Can someone tell me, what do you think stops influence? What prevents good communication? If you can maybe just type it into the chat. Someone is saying that my voice is cutting out. Okay, now it's good. Okay. Feeling intimidated sometimes, absolutely. Fear, anger. Yep. So Joe's saying sometimes, if we feel intimidated or we make someone feel intimidated, that's a barrier to influence. Wahida's saying fear. If I fear, maybe if you can expand on what you mean by fear, Wahida. Is that fear? Am I afraid to have the conversation, or fear of the outcome? Anger, Fida, yes, anger gets in the way, absolutely. Lack of confidence, absolutely. Not having the right principles as role models, absolutely. Our values and principles need to be driving and shaping our communication and interactions. So I'm going to share with you some things and expand cultural norms, social conditioning, lack of knowledge. Great answers. So things like conflict. If I already have a conflict with somebody, that gets in the way. Imagine I have an example. Years ago, I was in a meeting, and this other team lead that I have as a colleague, we're both team leads at that time. And this guy just always brushed me up the wrong way, just really gets under my skin. Constantly, I'm getting in conflicts with him. We have a meeting, something that he said, right? He's trying to influence the room. Something that he said, I took it personally and instantly got me offside, instantly, right? Now that tension between us gets in the way of influence. So he wasn't able to influence me well. Listening, my ability to actively and truly listen with empathy. I'm going to share some skills with you today, how we can do that. Cultural and language, transparency and trust, etc. Obviously, these things that you need to work on and build transparency and trust. Things like communication styles, personality profiles, interests and need, and ego. Ego is a big one. Now, those things in bold are communication and personality styles. We're going to touch on today. Interests and needs. We're going to talk about human needs psychology. What are my core needs, and how we ensure that we can influence people by understanding what their needs are, what their motivations are. And then we're going to talk about some emotional intelligence. prevent the ego in getting in the way. All right, can I get thumbs up? Everything's okay. So I'll make sure that we're all good. Maybe just a couple of people say yes or all good. Perfect. Okay, thank you. We'll start off with self-mastery and developing emotional intelligence. Now, I'm not talking about emotional intelligence is, I mean, you could do a whole course, you could spend weeks on it, right? We obviously don't have that time. I'm going to touch on just a few things and a few key points. And the first stage of emotional intelligence, which is self-mastery, being able to control and manage my own emotions. That's the first thing we're going to start off with. Question to everybody. What are people most interested in? If I'm having a conversation with somebody, are they interested in what's best for me, or are they interested in what's best for them? Now, I think it's a bit of an obvious one, but let's have a look. What do you think? Just type in the chat. Okay, so me, as in when you say you, me as in that's you. Okay, so if you put yourself in okay, yeah, okay. So when I'm having a conversation, let's say with May, she's most interested in what's best for her. Some people are saying both. Okay, them, yep, absolutely. Let me give you an example. If you're going to buy a car, if I'm going to buy a car, or you're going to buy a car, the person who's selling me the car, what are they looking for? What would they be looking for? Right? And Khadija is saying it depends on the conversation and the person. Okay, good. So if I'm purchasing a car, the seller is assessing, can the buyer afford it? Can I give them a discount? Are they worth a discount? If it's a transactional, this is one of those things that we're going to be mindful of. We don't want to, we want to make sure that we move away from just purely transactional interactions and communication, because if it's a transactional, it's all about the thing that I'm talking about. All right, and I'll explain a bit more what that means. If I'm the buyer in that instance, I'm going to buy or purchase a car, then I'm looking for the features of the car, the price, the warranty, but I also want to make sure that I'm comfortable with the seller as well. When I'm hiring staff, now this is a good one. When I'm hiring staff, because there's no tangible exchange of goods, when I'm hiring a staff, the employer is assessing the skills, the experience, the cultural fit of the employee, but the applicant is also assessing to see, is the salary right? Is that the type of salary? Is that the level of salary that I want? The benefits. I mean, what about the company culture? I want to meet my manager. I want to see how he or she manages and their style and their communication. Are they nice and kind? Are they aggressive, etc.? So sometimes it's both. But whenever we're in an interaction, in an influencing communication, two-way interaction, always think of what does the other person want. Okay, let's have a look at the next thing. Here's what happens when, as I mentioned, one of the barriers to communication and influence is the ego. But I will put it to you that to truly influence someone, you have to make sure that you can manage and control your own emotions. I don't know if anyone's been into this situation, but there's been a time I can remember very, very clearly, a time when I was having a conversation with my manager about a promotion, right? I was being promoted from a technical lead into a software development manager. And the conversation was around, am I ready? Am I the right person? Et cetera, et cetera. I was so nervous. Right? And the fear of not getting the promotion crept in, all that, et cetera. So that could get in the way. When I was, able to focus on, okay, well, what's the need of the company? How do I add value to the company through that role? And you focus on that. How do I add value to my manager through that role? If you focus on that first, then that will hopefully get a lot of those emotions out of the way. But focus on try and make sure that you manage your emotions. So it's the self-mastery piece. Now, another barrier to with the ego is I need there's three needs that get in the way, right? They need to be right. So just feeling like, well, it has to be my way. I have to get the best outcome that I want. So I have to be right. Needing to feel smart, needing to be seen to make progress is another issue. Okay. Who's heard of the golden circle? Who's come up with this model? There's a lot of videos that did the rounds probably a few years ago. Yep, very good. Dr. Rawa, quite familiar with that. SS, I'll tell you who that is in a minute. Who else? Can someone else guess? So the golden circle is, well, it's not specifically about influence, but the golden circle was suggested by a management consultant called Simon Sinek. Yes, yeah, correct. So Simon Sinek is a management consultant who observed how people communicate when they sell their products or motivate the employees or try and sell something to their customers. And what he's saying that a lot of people make the mistake of communicating from the outside in. So they focus on what they do, how they do it, and then after that, why they do it. But what I'm suggesting to you, just as Simon Sinek suggests, is we need to always focus on the why first, the purpose. What's the intention? What's the, is it ethical? Is it ecological? Is it good for both of us? So always focus on, what is it good for them? Why am I communicating? Why am I trying to influence? We'll be sharing some techniques that will help with this soon. It has to be good for them, has to be good for me, has to be good for the greater good, right? So ethical and ecological. And then we look at how am I going to influence the skills, the techniques, the method, which some of those will be covered today in the training. And then we look at the what, what do I want them to think after I communicate with them, after this influencing interaction? How do I want them to think? How do I want them to feel? How do I want them to do? What's the action that I want them to take? Right? But it must always fall in the guidelines of the conversation and the influencing being ethical and ecological. And this is one of the important things when I teach these things or when I share these things. I always make sure that I get, particularly in a face-to-face workshop, we always have to ensure that the training is used and the learnings are used in an ethical and ecological way. Otherwise, it becomes manipulative. All right, another question for you. What are people most persuaded by? What are people most persuaded by? Now, I know it's both, but what are they most persuaded by? Feelings, B, feelings, okay. What else? Let's make it interactive. I want to see a lot more. Should be facts. Yeah, can be either. Feelings. Who says who? Okay, feelings. Okay, good. So what's interesting is this. Here's what's interesting. And Dr. Sumaya is saying feelings as well. Here's what's interesting. When it comes to me, to ourselves, we think, well, we're objective, logical thinkers. So I always base my decisions on facts, right? I've looked at the facts and I've made a decision, right? I'm not primarily driven by feelings and emotions, right? That's what research shows, that when it comes to ourselves, we believe and we think that it's all about facts. But when it comes to others, we say, well, obviously she made a decision. She said what she said because she's emotional, or he made that decision based on his feelings, etc. But what research shows, and most of you are correct, research shows that most people are persuaded most of the time based on feelings, and there's a subconscious or unconscious thing to this. I'll share a model with you in a minute, that there's a lot more that goes into making a decision than just purely facts. And if we want to prove this, this is an interesting example. I want you to think of this scenario or an example when you last had an interaction with someone that you really don't like, someone who's upset you, someone who's, you know, gets under your skin, like that guy that my peer many years ago, you know, someone who really gets under your skin and annoys you. Would you, if you have an interaction with them, would you really listen to their facts and numbers and information that they present? Or are you really influenced more by how you feel about that person? Most people will say, I'm influenced by how I feel about them. Now, same thing. If you like someone, you know, your partner, etc., someone you're comfortable with at work, again, you're more likely to agree with them. You're more likely to trust them. You're more likely to look at the facts and the figures and the numbers when you already have a rapport established and a trust established between you. All right, moving to the next slide. And this quote by which is an American poet and civil rights activist. She says that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I think that really illustrates the point that we're talking about here. How are we all going? Is this making sense? Is there something that you want to share? Let's see. Let's just open to the floor. We're about half an hour into the meeting. Or the session, I should say, the webinar. All good. Joe saying all good. Is there anything that sort of stands out that someone wants to share? Maybe like a practical example from their own. There's a lot of people who have lots of life experience. Can someone share something with us? And maybe like a 30-second story. I'm going to put you on the spot, Joe. Do you want to unmute yourself and share some examples with us? Dr. Rawa, maybe Dr. Sumaya, Dr. Mustafa Abu Bilal. If you can share some of these stories.
I'm trying to unmute myself for a while, yeah. Well, it's very hard to put me on the spot that I remember a story like that. Those situations doesn't come every day. And it's always been, especially when you're in a leadership role and you're a senior manager. I do PMO and program management delivery mainly, so I'm the one who's speaking all the time. People looks at you to understand what's happening. So you always have to be very about the audience and the stakeholders. And there's something which my manager kept telling me about. Just be careful. Maybe a little bit of tough love could help. Good, because in our domain of practitioner, as you refer to it, or delivery point of view, disciplines is required, and people need to be practical and time bound and things like that. So sense of urgency has to be there in order to deliver and take the extra milestone.
Nice.
That's
nice.
For me in general. Okay, good. So yeah, feedback is very important, and how you receive the feedback is even more important.
Absolutely.
How I do make people feel, well, when the situation is there, the situation presents itself, we have to take it a bit seriously. A funny story, I'll tell you something. A month ago, we did a team workshop identifying our profiles, communication profiles, using something called DISC, right? So DISC
I'll be sharing that.
Yeah. Good.
I'll be sharing that today. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good. So before we jump into it, when the profiles were announced and everyone was looking at it, I got an IS, and my team told me, "Oh, you should be D." So D is the direction person, the person who are direct, the person who are influencers.
Dominant, directive,
dominant, yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah.
And I said, no. What makes you say is that? That's me. You see, there is me. Good.
Yeah.
If you guys don't do your job and deliver a good job, then I have to switch to a D in order to get you back on the same page on the line.
Yeah.
So when we get back to the disc profile, maybe we can talk more.
Absolutely. That's a really good one. That's a really good one. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. Can I have another one, another story, a 30-second share? Who's going to share with us?
So, Brother Abdullah, sorry, can I
Hi.
go?
Yes, of course. Who's this?
Yeah, this is Rawa. So
Hi, Dr. Rawa.
it's not about a story. I thought I'll just share with you this exercise that I'm
Yes, please.
practically doing for some years now with myself. In regards of communication, or most of the time you are right, you're focusing on feelings to make decisions, and it's very dangerous actually to do that. And
Absolutely.
and I thought, let's focus on the behavior of the person, not just person itself, himself or herself. We have to focus on the behavior. And if you criticize the behavior, not the person. And therefore, when you are in a situation that people criticize you, so you listen, and then you can use this emotional intelligence to start responding based on the fact and on what's going on in the conversation, not the feelings. And it is very hard. It's very hard. I have to be honest about this, but it's an exercise that I'm using now, and it's been good. It's been good with me to it's very hard when you have authority and they are using these decisions, and you have impose the decision, but in the same situation, you have to be careful how to stand up for your principles and be conscious of your principles and do this.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and that's a really good point. No, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
I just want to highlight what I'm saying is I just want to make sure that I'm articulating this well. What I'm saying, and thank you very much for sharing that, Dr. Rawa. What I'm saying is, by default, and most of the time, people go to feelings first. Now, it depends on their personality profile and their psychology schema and their upbringing. There's a whole lot of stuff, right? Which some of which we'll go through. Right? Obviously, we can't cover a lot of things in a lot of detail, but I will take you through a few things. Their needs, their motivations will determine how they think and how they feel, how they decide, and their behavior. But generally, psychology shows that, research shows that people tend to go to their feelings more often. Now, is that the best way to decide and make decisions and influence people? Not necessarily, but the reality is most humans do that. So knowing that and using it ethically, obviously we can make sure that we can use both facts and feelings and an understanding of human behavior to make sure that we can get the best outcome for that person, myself, and the greater good. And this is the idea behind influence without authority. It's not about going, yeah, well, this is my title. You need to listen to me because I'm the husband. You need to listen to me because I'm the boss. You need to listen to me because I'm the big brother. No, it's not about that. It's about what's the best outcome for that person, for my wife in the first example, for my colleagues, my boss, my team, my direct reports, my siblings, my children, etc. What's best for them? What's best for me as well? I get what I want, they get what they want, and what's good for the greater good. It's ecological as well. I'm going to share another model with you, and if someone, yes, Khadija wants to share a quick story, please do.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
You hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right, beautiful. So I'm not gonna be able to have my camera on.
That's okay.
A quick story.
I can hear you.
As a manager, so I'm a pre-kindergarten manager, and what we're taught in my role is to always put customers first. And once I was serving this lady, and she was just talking about her life, although she was here to enroll her child into the pre-kindergarten program, and she was just talking about her life, and me being there and listening to her made her feel heard, and she came back, although she didn't have the intention to. So we
Interesting.
basically had a customer come in, again, as you mentioned, feelings. She felt that she was heard, and now she's joined the program. Another thing to add on that, having or giving customers the ability to hear, you know, what they want from the business or what their needs are to be met. I feel like it makes them feel like, hey, you know what? Someone's here for me, someone's listening to
Yeah.
me. And again, it's playing up on the feeling part to make them.
Absolutely. No, thank you. That's a great illustration, Khadija. So, these stories, illustrate, everybody has these stories, and we can all, if you reflect back to your life, your career, your relationships, you'll realize that if I focus on my ego, and look, let's just put it out there, right? At some stage, we all do. Sometimes, we make that mistake that I'll look at what's in it for me first before I look at, what's best for that person I'm talking to, right? So my ego gets in the way, and this happens, to everybody. Let's just put that out there. But when you are trained, or when you train to train yourself and learn to focus on the needs of the person, the motivations of the person, the communication style and the profile of the person, then you're able to connect with them a lot better. Then you're able to give them what they want, get what you want, and it's a win-win situation. Dr. Sumaya is saying there are several instances of interpersonal interactions where there are no obvious, rational, logical reasons for certain behaviors towards us, yet we will experience outright negativity from the moment of interaction or of contact because of perceived understanding and projected feelings. That's amazing. That's a really good example. I'll give you an example. When you have, that's a really good example. Let's say, it's interesting, a friend of mine, he's Sikh, right? He's Sikh, is from the Sikh community, and he is constantly misunderstood, or he's I guess the way he conducts himself and the way he dresses, people, he's got a beard and he's got a turban. People think, is he Muslim? Is he, he looks different. Same thing with, Muslim women, for example. And sometimes that gets in the way of communication. But what's interesting is if that does get in the way of communication, just based on perceived, looks, if that gets in the way of communication, then that's another barrier. But what Dr. Sumaya is saying is sometimes if by default I don't have that connection, or if it's a new interaction and we don't have that rapport, then it doesn't, if I understood it correctly, Dr. Sumaya, you can unmute yourself and maybe expand on it. No matter how much facts and figures and logical reasoning I can share, that person just will never get me, right? It's already a failed interaction. Dr. Sumaya, feel free to unmute yourself and expand on that if you like. I'll just wait for like a couple of seconds.
Thank you for that.
There
can
we go.
you hear me?
Absolutely, I can. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you. Quite engaging.
Dr. Sumaya, you're, by the way, Dr. Sumaya is a mentor, is a counselor and a life coach, and she works in the psychology. She has a psychology practice, so she's definitely a mentor, and I really appreciate you joining. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So with that, you're right. It's along those lines. And then when we're talking about the ability to influence, it's really important that we start from a place of self-belief, because that's what then helps us to recognize that it's not so much about what we do or don't do.
Dr. Sumaya, there's a bit of feedback. Yeah, there's a.
Okay,
if you have, yeah, sorry. I think, Dr. Sumaya, if you have more than one device connected to the same webinar in the room or very close vicinity, there seems to be like feedback. I've had that issue before. Go ahead, try again. Much better.
Yeah, it might be the
earphones I was using. So
Oh, okay.
I was just saying that what can often happen is that we then internalize that resistance or the negativity or the projections, and we feel like there is something wrong with us, and that then affects our own perception of what type of power and influence we can have. Whereas
Right.
we understand that that can happen. It's not so much about what you do or don't do, but by recognizing that those things that's coming at us may not be ours at all, may just be projection from the other person or the other party.
That's very interesting. That's very deep. That takes the conversation to a whole new level. Thank you very much for sharing that. Really
Thank you
appreciate
for
that.
having me.
Really appreciate that. That's really good. I'm going to share a model with you. This here illustrates the iceberg effect, illustrates, the levels of communications that we have, and this is the iceberg is often used as an analogy to illustrate how deep the motivators are. Obviously when the Titanic hit an iceberg, they only saw the tip of the iceberg. And that's what usually happens with an iceberg. It's only the tip, and the tip may not look as big as the whole. What's above the water will not be as big as the entire thing under the water. So if you can think about human behavior, and when you try and influence and interact with people, what will happen is the information, the facts, their physical sort of responses, their body language, their the changes in their facial expressions, the hand gestures, etc. Those are all, and the things that the words that are said are all external visible factors. The actions, the behaviors, the results that are produced. And you've got to be aware that under the surface, what drives that behavior is a lot more. Things like, their thoughts, their feelings, which if you're not trained, it's very hard to pick up on these things. Their attitudes, their experiences. How do they interpret, things in the world, their world around them? Their beliefs, their values, and their needs. And one of the things I actually didn't put on there, their needs. We're going to be talking about human needs psychology in a minute. If you translate that to influence and particularly communication more broadly, as you guys have been sharing with us, if you look at that iceberg, the data and the facts are just the tip of the iceberg. Underneath that, what drives that is the emotions, the feelings. But then what drives that is the values and beliefs that that person has. And again, you think, well, I know what their value. They're from the same culture as I am. They're a partner. They've been a partner of, we're partners, business partners. We're we're married. And I know, how she thinks. I know where her beliefs are because she has the same maybe religious or cultural beliefs as I do. But then there are human needs in an intimate relationship, a nice model that represents the needs of each partner is a model called the 5 Love Languages. I can't remember the author, but the 5 Love Languages that can help you understand the needs of your partner and how you want to receive love, how you give love, and how your partner will do. In terms of needs, we'll look at needs in a minute. But if you think about this model, what you're seeing, what you're interpreting is always surface. And the question is, how do I explore their emotions? How do I explore their beliefs and values and their needs? Now, you can either talk about it with them, discuss it with them, if you have enough rapport, and sometimes when you understand these models, you're able to have an educated guess. You're able to have an educated guess. Joe just shared with us the link to the 5 love languages. Thank you. We're not going to go through the 5 love languages in this seminar. Okay, this is not about intimate relationships. This is not a marriage workshop. This is just a more general, broad webinar. Okay, so let's talk quickly. We're running a little bit behind time, so I'm going to speed up a little bit if it's okay. We're going to talk about human needs and what drives and determines what we do. We know that we're most happy when our needs are met, right? In a healthy way. And we're not as happy if we obviously don't. So what does it mean? And what's interesting, there's this idea that our needs trump our values, right? If I need attention, but I know that my partner needs space and she needs to focus on her work. Now that's very important for her. I value her. But if mine, for example, or if her needs are not met, that will get in the way, that will cause problems. And same thing with your colleagues at work, right? If your direct report is underpaid, right? Now they've got a need to make sure they provide for themselves and their family. But you're thinking, well, hold on, I've employed you here to do a good job, right, and work hard. But if their needs are not met, that's going to cause issues. And what's interesting is if we can't find a resourceful way or a good way, a positive way of meeting our needs, we will accept an unresourceful way of meeting those needs. All right, let's explore. Now, this is obviously, there are many models that talk about, human needs. There is the hierarchy of needs that, everybody studied in psychology. This particular model was suggested by Anthony Robbins. Now, Anthony Robbins is not a psychologist or a psychotherapist. He's not, but he's got, over 30, 40 years experience as a life and business coach. He has he's worked with millions of people as he claims. And I see this model as a very simplified, it's a nice and simple model. Now, it may not have the academic rigor as other models that they teach in psychology, but I find it quite a nice and easy way to interpret human needs. So what are these human needs? Let's have a look at them. What we're saying is people generally have 6 human needs, right? And they're generally classified as, needs of the self and some needs of the higher spirit or whatever else. So need for certainty and a need for variety, and they're not opposite. We both have a need to feel safe and avoid pain, and a need for variety. I need to have fun, etc. Need for love and connection. I need to have those connections. It's not always intimate, connections and relationships. There are important connections at work. This is why, it's interesting when we moved after COVID, when people went online and, everyone's working from home and you're not allowed to leave the house. Everyone thought, great, perfect. We're going to work from home. I'm free. I'll have time for myself. And that worked for a lot of people, most people, for a certain period of time. And then there were some issues, right? People started to feel lonely, depression went up, etc. So that need for human connection is really important, and it's really important if you're working in a business or a community where those interactions are not always face to face. You got to think about those things. How can I establish that connection? How can I establish that human connection, that human touch with people if they're not face to face with me? But in intimate relationships like marriage and etc., that's definitely a key need that partners need to have. Significance is another need. Significance is more about wanting to feel important. The need for growth, learning, development, expanding my knowledge, learning new things, and then there's a need of contribution, meaning I want to feel that I'm giving back to society. I'm helping the poor, I'm helping the needy, right? I'm teaching other people. And some people value, teaching others. They have a high, need or they're more oriented towards teaching, and they love that because they're contributing to other people's learning and growth. Now, what Anthony Robbins and psychologists say is that you don't only have one need. You obviously have a mix of all of those needs, but at any point in time in your life, one of those needs may be at its peak, its highest. So if you're going through a lot of challenges in life, maybe your need for certainty might be heightened, right? Maybe if you're bored, if you don't have much to do, and etc., maybe that need for variety. I know my kids sometimes tell me, I'm bored, Dad, I'm bored. I want to do something different. I want to go out, I want to play on the Xbox or whatever it is that they play on these days. That need for variety. Need for significance. I can clearly, I have a clear example of a number of people in my life that I've worked with and relatives that have this massive need to feel significant and important. And you've got to talk to them in a particular way. Then again, like as I said, that need for connection and love. All right, let's go through very quickly. I'm going to go through these just briefly on each need. I'm going to describe what each one looks like, and then we can maybe open up for questions. All right, the first need is need for certainty, and that's all about feeling safe, avoiding pain, feeling comfortable, and code words that usually hear to assess if someone has that need is they like safety, they like comfortable. I want to be comfortable. I want things to settle down. I want things to calm, right? So at that point in time, they have that need for certainty. The need for variety or uncertainty. They're not. It's an interesting paradox because they're not conflicting. We have a need. We have both needs. So the need for surprise and suspense. That's why a good movie will keep you on the edge of your seat for all 2 hours, because it's that it takes you through that variety, and there's ups and downs and etc. And sometimes it's fast paced. So code words are I need change. I need a bit of entertainment. Even fear. Here's what's interesting. Fear sometimes can play out as a need for variety. Significance. So need for significance is when people want to feel important. They want to feel wanted and needed. They have, if it's unresourceful and gets messy, they could have an unhealthy need for superiority. So code words that you'll hear are, I want to feel proud. And by the way, significance and feeling important is not a bad thing, right? Psychologists will tell you it's not a bad thing. It's just that if it's managed and it's used in a resourceful way, then that's you can work with that. I want to feel important. I'm proud. And okay, Dr. Rawa has to head out. She's already told me that she's got another session that she has to go to. Thank you so much, Dr. Rawa, for staying with us up until this point. Okay, so what's the next need? Need for love and connection. Wanting to spend, again, depending on how people want that need and connection in a healthy, resourceful way, based on that interaction, they want to feel loved. They want to feel like they fit in. That need for community. That's why communities are very important for people. That's why the household is very important for people, right? So that need to stay connected and build relationships and build trust. That's prevalent in all human beings, even animals. It's very important. And need number 5 is the need for growth. When we stop, as they say, when you stop growing, you're either green and growing, or what do they say? Or ripe and rotting, or something like that. Right, that's very important for people. And need for a connection and contribution, wanting to know or feel that I'm contributing to other people. I'm going beyond my own needs, etc. So I'm going to open up to everybody, and I'm going to take a 30-second break. If you can give me an example in the chat, which of those needs, of your needs, are being met in your day-to-day? What do you think your highest needs are? What do you think your highest needs are? And if you can give me an example of how you would interact with someone at each of those needs, maybe like someone who's, you might have an example of, someone that you've dealt with who has a high need for significance, for, as an example, and how have you dealt with that? In 30 seconds, I'll come back and you can share, but if you can put in the chat, what do you think are your highest needs? I'm going to take a 30-second break and I'll be back. Okay, I am back, and I see no one's shared. Can I just get a confirmation that everyone's still online? We're still engaged. We've got people there still. I'm not talking to myself. Okay, Khadija's saying, okay, good. All right, great. Who's going to share? Who's going to share? Ah, Hamdi's joined us. Welcome. Okay, so who's going to share? If you don't share, I am going to pick you at random. So who's going to share? Give us a 30-second, only 30-second example of an interaction or influencing interaction, communication that you've had recently, maybe that where you had to deal with someone who had one of those needs quite prevalent, and how did you deal with it? So Joe, your 30-second share.
Let's see, how do you define a need to start with? As you mentioned earlier, a need which I need to meet on day-to-day is one of the collaboration from the team. Yeah, that's a need. Okay, and this need to happen. Okay, and it hasn't been met 100%. It's work in progress.
Okay.
What will it take to change? It takes more coaching and education to get a small team into a level where I need them to operate at, from that collaboration component.
Nice, nice. Thank you, Joe. That was good. In a work environment, Joe is saying that he has an expectation and a need for collaboration. So when there's no collaboration, then obviously he has to get people to work together. He has to find ways to ensure that collaboration is high and people are performing. Fida saying, typing 1 second. Okay, can we go back to the previous slide, please? Absolutely. Contribution is my highest, as I am very active within my work community. Excellent. Okay, I'm going to take you back a few slides. These are the 6 human needs. So certainty, variety, significance, love and connection, growth, and contribution. Okay, Fida saying variety, contribution, and growth. Need for more connection with friends. Okay, great, thank you. I need my hard work to be appreciated and valued. Excellent. What would that be? What would that be? Where would that sit, do you think? Need for, would that be a need for to feel important and appreciated? Is it for growth? Okay, Joe has a need for growth. Nice. Now he was
answer your question.
Oh, you're answering.
In. So I think it fits in growth. So we need people to appreciate your work, means they're growing you.
Okay, well, it could be a number of things. I personally think that when we feel unappreciated, that potentially our need for significance is not being met. My need for significance. So if I'm, and I'll tell you what, I have been in roles, I'm sure most of you have, and you can give me, I'm sure you can give me a lot of examples on this, that you've been unappreciated or underappreciated, undervalued, right? So that need for significance, when I've been in those roles, my need for significance, my need for feeling important and valued is not met, right? Yes, they could send me on, courses, they could give me challenging work, but if I'm not getting appreciated, if I'm not getting a thank you, well done, you're valued, you're important, that was nice, thank you for that, that was good. If I'm not getting that, then that's an issue for me. And obviously that would be for not necessarily everyone. Some people just don't want that. At least they say they don't want that, but most people do. Shay says, I have a need for certainty in my general day life. Thank you for sharing that. Wahida saying contribution and connection and growth. At a personal, so Mustafa saying at a personal level, I need to have feelings of satisfaction when I'm doing a particular job, which is I'm guessing is significance and feeling valued, feeling important. Hamdi saying contribution and growth. Great. Now, here's how we can use this model to influence others. If I am working with, let's say I'm interacting with my dad. Now, he's an engineer. He's worked pretty hard all his life. And and now he's retired, right? And his need for significance and feeling important plays out in conversations where he's not getting that need met, right? So for example, if he's, for example, if he's not being thanked or he's not being appreciated, if he's not being referred to in conversations, you could tell. Now, if I'm saying, Dad, look, that I know you've worked pretty hard throughout your life. You've done, you built all this for us. You bought this house. Out of from your hard work, that need is met, and you can instantly see you can see the tone of voice changes. He'll compliment me. The whole conversation will change. So the question is, or I guess what I'm putting to you is, when you are working with people, try and work out what is their highest need in this moment. Now, I'm guessing most of the time we can't just ask them, like if I'm interacting with someone saying grasped by their attention and need. Yep. Okay. And if I'm interacting with, for example, with Joe, I'm not going to turn up and say, hey, Joe, in a work environment, particularly, I'm going to say, hey, Joe, what's your core need at the moment? Obviously, we're not going to do that, right? But through interactions and through conversations, obviously, if the person I'm interacting with is aware of this stuff, absolutely. So Haj Mustafa is saying using praise without exaggeration. Absolutely. We need to thank people if I'm getting value from what they're getting. And you can see when the interaction is not going too well, when the interaction is not going well, if my influence is not working, I've got to ask myself, which of their core needs, core human needs, which of their 6 am I not meeting? I'm not helping them meet, or maybe it's not being met. Which of those 6 are not being met? Could be a number of them, but it could be also one primary one. Okay, I'm gonna move on because we are running out of time. I want to share with you another model, but let's play a game first. Let's play a game. Which of these shapes on the screen best represents you? Which of these shapes best represents you? And only pick one. Only pick one. Let's see. Just type in the chat. Shay is a D. Okay, who else? A, May is an A. Who else? I've got 2. Okay, C, B, C. Okay, so which one appeals to you the most? Which one appeals to you? You might like all of them, but which one appeals to you the most?
A is tricky to be a square head, that's tricky, so be careful.
Okay, let's have a look. Now, I must preface what I'm about. This is a fun game. And this is not one of those academic models that, that a lot of rigor has gone into it. This is based on some level of research, which is interesting, and it actually aligns to the next model I'm going to share with you, which is the personality profiling. There is some alignment between those 2 models. But let's have a look at what they represent. If you're a triangle, if you have more of a leadership skills, you take charge and move fast, you're a bottom line person, you're efficient, confident, very competitive, and you love a debate, but sometimes you get impatient. You're very impatient. Joe, what were you? Which one were you? You're a B. Okay, were you a B? Depends on context. Okay, Dr. Samaya is saying depends. So she can flex, depends on context. Okay. So you're a triangle. Excellent. Yes. All right. Let's have a look. Square. You're loyal. You're hardworking. You're organized. You're not fond of change. You want stability. Okay. Potentially, you're not the best team player. You prefer to work on your silo by yourself, but you're prone to view fun as unnecessary. Okay. Now, obviously, yes. When I talk about the personality profiles, it doesn't mean, and as Joe said, and as Dr. Sumaya said, just in the comments, we're not just one profile. We do flex and we do change, and you can be more of a leader when the situation presents itself, etc. But this is more of a fun game before we get into the other model. And if you are a circle, you're more of a helper, a caretaker, or a caregiver, I should say. You're fun-loving, but you try too hard to please. Okay, there you go. If you're a squiggle, means you're a bit more on the creative side. You've got high energy, but you can often act or speak without thinking. So that's something to be careful of. Now, these are obviously generalizations, so it's not like you're just fixed into that model. Okay, we're going to look at a model called E-DISC, or extended DISC model, to describe to try and understand personality profiles or personality types. I'm going to explain to you in a minute what that means. But there are different models. It's not just the one model. E-DISC is the one I prefer to use because it's quite simple and it's easy to understand. For me, anyway, psychologists might use different models. So it's not just the one model. The other thing that you've got to keep in mind is if you identify yourself as a particular profile or type of person or personality or behavior, you're not fixed. You're not fixed. Okay, and I'll explain more about that later on. E-DISC is a model that was developed originally by Carl Jung and later expanded in the 1950s. And then, a couple of decades ago in 1990s was expanded further to become what's called as the E-DISC, or extended DISC model. And what the E-DISC model represents is it looks at, there are two planes, if you like. It looks at people who are on one scale that are, if you can look here, the vertical scale, outgoing versus reserved, right? The outgoing or reserved. Now, sometimes I am outgoing and sometimes I'm more reserved, but what's your default? By default, what are you? If you look at also on the horizontal scale, you're either task-oriented, you look at more data and things that you work with and objects, versus people-oriented. Now, those two scales, when you put them like that, you get 4 quadrants. You get 4 quadrants that make up the DISC model. Okay, here we go. And they've looked at this and they said, okay, well, if someone is outgoing but more task-focused, they call that more of a dominant, a D, dominant, determined, directive style. I'll explain a little bit more about each style in a minute. If you're outgoing, more active, outgoing person, but more on the people side, you're a people person a lot more than task, you're more inspiring, influencing, and enthusiastic. If you are more reserved, but still people, you're more people-oriented, but you're reserved, you're not as outgoing, then you're classified as the supportive type, the patient, the steady type. And then if you are task-oriented but reserved, you're more cautious, you're more factual, you're about facts, numbers, analytical. All right, hence the DISC, D-I-C-S-C, DISC. Now, here's what's interesting, all right? And this is how I want you to use this model. I want you to think about your own profile, okay, where you might sit, and also keep this in mind when you interact with people. How can you influence them? So this model, I believe, and this is the reason I left it to the end, it brings everything together. It brings all that we've covered together. I'm going to show you just per slide each profile, how they generally think and how you can interact with them and how they're persuaded. All right, I've got a summary of that. Let me just check in with everybody. Any questions so far before we delve into the DISC model, the E-DISC model? Any questions? All good? Joe saying all good. Excellent. All right. We've got about 10 minutes to go, so I'm going to go through this relatively quickly. Okay. All right. The dominant profile, the dominant profile, is more outgoing and task-oriented. You're more decisive. If you're more of a D, you're more decisive and strong-willed. So if you feel, well, I'm a strong-willed person, I can make decisions quickly, right? This person is more likely to say, just do it. You know, we've all had those bosses, right? Just, I don't care, just get it done, right? I don't care what it takes, just get it done. They're more of a D personality, a D energy. When under pressure, they lack concern. I have a very good example when with a boss that I've worked with in the past, who is very high D, very high dominant personality. And by the way, don't take these labels on these profiles without judgment. So dominant doesn't mean, you know, that person is a bad person. It's just that they're more of a driver. They're more of a dominant oriented personality. They like to lead, and they like to, not just lead, that's probably not the right word for it. They're more like to direct, right? So under pressure, they lack concern. Yeah, that example that I was going to share with you, that boss is very direct.
That last line.
Say again?
Control freak.
Control freak, yes. Sometimes they can become control freaks. Now, it doesn't mean control freak if they are sort of more unhealthy, sort of unresourceful. But yes, they do want to have control. They do want, and they do have if we look at the core needs, if you look at the third line, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fifth line down, one of their needs, or some of their needs, are certainty, but significance. They really want to win. And their greatest fear is loss of control. I had a manager years ago where he was such a high D personality that he was literally bang on the table and say, whatever I say here goes. I'm the boss. He literally has to remind everybody almost all the time that he's the boss, right? Not sure why, but that's I guess that's his way. And bangs down on the table and say, this has to happen, and it has to happen my way, right? So sometimes it does get pretty unresourceful and unhealthy working with him. But what the challenge is, yes, Shay says that boss has unmet needs. Absolutely. That's a really good pickup. His needs for significance, maybe needs there's other needs that he maybe even connection, right? And this is what happens when you have a very high, unhealthy, dominant personality. You burn bridges, and then you break connections. You break trust with people because you're just constantly just walking all over them. And then internally they complain about, well, no one wants to make me feel important. I don't feel important, right? And this is the problem. It could become a problem. Core needs, okay, persuaded. How do you work with this person? How do you influence this person? This person will make quick decisions, but with facts. So, and this is exactly how this particular person used to do. Joe's saying, D are profile to strategy crafting. Our profile to strategy or fit into strategic roles. Yes, okay, I get what you're saying. What Joe's saying is people who are D personalities, they're usually, you'll find them in high, sort of much senior roles, executive roles in the organization. And yes, that's true. You know why? Because they get things done. And sometimes they get things done at any cost. And if the culture of the organization is toxic, or if the culture of your community organization is toxic, those people get promoted very, very quickly. Absolutely right, Joe. Okay, so how do you work with someone like that? Someone who is, I'm sure you can all have examples. Someone who's like that, you present them facts, you do all the prep work, and you give them summaries. They're usually visual thinkers. They're visual learners or communicators. And they need quick information, quick facts. And generally, they make quick decisions based on those facts. They're inspiring. Inspiring is more like sociable. people. They tend, sales roles tend to attract more inspiring, enthusiastic, charismatic personalities. They like to have, one thing that you will hear them say is, well, let's have fun. Let's just enjoy it. It's okay. Take it easy. It's all good, right? Under pressure, they become disorganized, right? The D personality under pressure, they disengage. They don't care. But the I personality is more disorganized under pressure. Their core needs are variety. They constantly have a need for variety, constant variety and connection. They love connection. They love people. That's right, D. Let's have fun. The greatest fear is social rejection. The worst thing you can do with an I personality is just isolate them. And that's a problem, because D personalities, when they see there's an I personality, someone who's an I personality, if they want to punish them, they isolate them. They go silent. They stonewall them. How are they persuaded? They'll make quick decisions, and they're risk takers. They don't need all the facts. As long as they feel good, we have a connection, we've got a thing going, I can make a quick decision. That's fine. Let's just do it. You know, any of your friends who just, you know, at the drop of a hat says, yep, let's go out, let's have a pizza, let's go have fun, let's do this, let's go for a ride, let's do this. They're more of an I personality. Next is supportive. Supportive are more motherly archetypes. They're calm, they're careful, they're patient, they're good listeners. Generally, they're good listeners. They're very modest. Why? Because they're more reserved, but still people-oriented. They're the type of people that would say, let's do it together. Let's go together. They're the type of people who would check in on everybody in the team. Are you okay? Are you feeling okay? You know, Hamdi, is everything okay? I noticed that you weren't engaged in that meeting. Is everything okay? Are you sure? I'm here to help you. Right? That's a supportive, the S energy or S profile. Their core needs tend to be comfort, a little bit of certainty or comfort, and connection. They love connection. They love people, and they have a lot of care for people. The greatest fear is loss of stability. They don't want to feel like, they don't want to see that there's lack of stability in the team or lack of harmony in the team. And how do you persuade them? How do you influence them, right? They will rarely decide in the moment, but must feel that the decision must feel right. So if you're working with a personality type or a person who's more that you assess on who's caring and calm and patient, don't rush them. Don't ask them to make decisions quickly. Don't rush them. Give them time. Make sure that they feel connected. Tell them that we'll be okay. We'll be fine, right? Take your time and let me know when you're ready. And Shay is saying layoffs would have a strong impact on this sort of person. Absolutely. Absolutely. So layoffs, when a company like, you know, large mega organizations, corporates, lay off people in the thousands, the S personality, by the way, whether they stay or they leave, it has a massive impact on them. They feel really bad. They feel guilty that this has happened to people. Thank you. Thank you, Shay. And finally, the last personality type is the cautious. So the cautious are like the engineers, the programmers. I was very much a C personality or a C energy, a C profile early in my career. And I was very reserved, very task focused. It was all about precision. It's interesting because when you, anyone who's a C, anyone who's a cautious personality, the type of people that care about the third, fourth, fifth number after the decimal point, they're the engineers. But the thing is with that is, I'm not saying this in a derogatory way. That's a great personality to have for engineers, because you don't want to drive over a bridge or live in a building or live in a house designed by anyone who doesn't care about that level of detail and that level of precision, right? So they're generally the type of people that follow rules, they're logical, they're careful, but sometimes in their communication, they tend to be too logical, they use too much logic and reasoning to try and get their point across, which is, tends to be a mistake. They're the type of people that say, we must do it right. This has to be done right. They take a lot longer. They're usually procrastinators because everything has to be perfect. Under pressure, they become overly critical. If anyone in their team who sits there and criticizes everybody else, right, because it's not done right, it's not perfect, they're usually a C personality. Their core needs is certainty and significance. They need to feel important, right? And they need to feel not just important, but they have to be right. They have to be right. The greatest fear is criticism of their work. The worst thing you can do with a C personality is criticize their work. Do not do that. You'll lose them. And they're persuaded they're a convincer with proof over time. So they are convinced, but you just need to give them time and you need to give them the facts and give them space and they'll eventually decide. Okay, we have hit 7:30. And I'm conscious that I've kept everybody on here. Look, I do have a couple more slides, but I understand we've hit 7:30. I want to do the right thing by everybody. I'll probably need about 5 more minutes. If you're happy to stay on, let's stay on. Otherwise, we'll just, I'm okay if you want to disconnect. It's completely understandable. If you do decide to leave, thank you so much for making the time. I really appreciate it. We'll stay in touch. If you can hang with me for another maybe 5 minutes max, we'll wrap up. Okay, quick question for everybody. If the boss says, I need to see you right now, or right after the meeting, what would a D personality think? What would a D personality? Let's put everything into practice. If your boss, or if someone, let's say, they're the boss or somebody says that, hey, Islam, Hamdi, Joe, I need to see you after the meeting, please. What would a D personality say? This quiz is like D to D talk. Personality, bring on the fight. Rolls up sleeve. Absolutely. Yes. So it actually depends on the tone as well. It depends on the tone, right? It depends on the context. So a D personality will either think, okay, I'll take you on. Yeah, that's okay. You want to criticize me? I'll take you on. Or if they think, oh man, this could be a promotion. They're very happy with me. It sounds like a challenge to a dominant personality. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. What about an inspiring person? What about an I personality? How would an I personality take that? And again, just put yourself in this context or frame of mind that I'm influencing people. It could be me asking the question. It could be me saying, hey guys, I need to see you after the meeting. Or you could receive that and hear it. So just put yourself in that place. How would you think, or how would you respond if you're an I personality? An I personality says, amazing, let's have a coffee. Exactly right. Yes. Like yes, it personally feels like it's an opportunity. Great. Yeah, they think this is great. This is I want to connect. I want to talk. I love it. And there's an element of surprise. Oh, I wonder what that's about. What about an S personality, a supportive person? What would a supportive person react or think and feel if someone says to them, I need to see you right after the meeting? And Shah says, S might think the boss needs my help. Okay, that's interesting. I wonder if everything's okay. Yes, Khadija is also right. An S would think that, oh, I wonder what's going on. I wonder who screwed up. And again, obviously, this depends on a number of things. Depends on the tone of the person. Depends on the context. But generally, an S person will immediately think, oh, I wonder if everything's okay. I wonder if she's okay. If the boss is okay. I wonder if anyone screwed up. How can I help? What about a C personality, a cautious personality? Yes, Shay says a C personality thinks, oh my God, I'm going to get fired and will panic. Joe says a C personality will panic. Absolutely, you're right. And you know how they would respond? They go and investigate all the facts to be ready to have that conversation, to present all the facts and find out what could have possibly happened and how it could have gone wrong. One more quiz. Let's go next quiz. If a boss says, or someone says, good job, how would a D personality respond? How would a D personality respond? Yes, Shay is saying, a D personality would say, well, of course, I knew it. Of course, I planned it all along. Yep, I know it. How about an I personality? How would an inspiring, outgoing personality respond to someone saying, good job? I feel good, thanks. Yep. Let's have a party. Joe saying, yeah, exactly right. An I personality or profile type would say, oh, yeah, great. Let's celebrate. Awesome. What about an S, a supportive personality? How would an S personality respond if someone says, good job? How would an S personality respond? Thanks to the team. Absolutely. Yes. Yes, absolutely. You know what? An S personality will hardly ever take credit. You know, we have this lady working with us at work in my current role now. She's a team leader and she's so high on the S scale. She's so high on the S scale. She literally has almost a meltdown if someone feels bad, if someone's been, someone's hurt or someone's sick or someone, she really, she cringes and she apologizes. She's constantly apologizing. She's constantly checking on people. So that's how an S personality would respond. Joe saying, I'm an S. You're a very caring person, Joe. So an S personality, if someone says to them, good job, they think, well, it's actually it's the team. The team did it. It's not me. But quietly, they would think, oh, I don't want to stand out. I don't want to stand out. What about a C personality? A C personality. Exactly. Shay is right. A C personality will start to be doubtful. They'll say, are you sure? I wonder what's really behind that. They'll start to even doubt, is there something else behind this compliment? Are you sure? Excellent. Imposter syndrome. Yes, a C can get into or can have this issue, what's called an imposter syndrome, where they think, no, it's not done right. I'm not the right person for the job. Why'd they pick me? There's something else behind it. And so on, they start doubting themselves. And with that, we wrap up. So I'm going to take this off the screen share. I want to see, let's take 30 seconds each. What's been valuable to you? What's been valuable to you? That's the end of the presentation. What's been valuable? If you can share with us, maybe 10 seconds even. What's been valuable? Joe, welcome.
No, thank you for the session. Thanks for the presentations you have put forward.
Pleasure.
The valuable bit was the exposure to the models you put forward for us. And it can be extended. It can be extended for more like a bit of comparison about the traditional influencing models versus the no authority ones.
Yeah.
Visual comparison, that one, next one, that'll be great.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Joe. Appreciate that. Anyone else want to share what's been great? And feel free to type it into the comments.
Thank you very much, Brother Abdul Fattah.
Dr. Abu Bilal, my pleasure.
It has been an inspiring talk and informative. I came to know more about how to identify different personalities at work and in the family and in the community, and be cautious, if I can use that term, cautious and careful on how to analyze different personalities and how to categorize them. And that by doing that, I would be in a better position to deal with them and winning them over, if I may say,
Excellent.
rather than losing them. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dr.
Thank you.
Abu Bilal.
Thank you.
And Fida, we've got Fida. You can unmute yourself and you can say something if you like. We've got Sumaya. Before you do that, we've got Dr. Sumaya saying thank you for your work in wealth. Appreciate it. It was engaging. Appreciate that. Thank you. Shay saying very informative. Activities based on the models helps reinforce learning, helps understand others and work with them better. Thank you so much, Shay. Appreciate that, Dr. Sumaya, as well. And Fida?
Thank you for making it understanding for all ages.
Pleasure.
And
Pleasure.
also simpler and like visual with the pictures and stuff. Appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you, Fida. All right, great.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Who's that?
Beautiful. Khan.
Hi, Khan. How are you?
Good, good. I just want to say thank you so much for that presentation. It was super informative. You know, you can really tell that you know what you're talking about, which is fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think that, you know, in particular, just sort of highlights, adds like a bit of perspective, I guess, like, you know, when you're communicating with people, like being able to categorize them based on those categories that you mentioned as well. Like, I think that's, you know, really, really beneficial. And, you know, the fact that you highlighted, you know, you got to speak to people's needs and to their potentially their emotions as well, prioritizing that. So just being able to categorize people and then speaking to their particular needs as well. I think that's fantastic. So
thank you so much
for that time.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Khan. Really appreciate that. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. And that's the end of the presentation. And you have a great night and really appreciate your time. And hopefully we'll see you in the next one. Thank you and good night.